People say trust is like glass. Mine's more like a cheap wine glass from IKEA. One drop, and you're picking up pieces for weeks. I'm Damon Harker, 38 years old, and I design buildings for a living. Not the fancy skyscrapers you see in movies, but the practical stuff. Strip malls, office complexes, the occasional restaurant. I'm good with my hands thanks to 15 years working construction before I got my architecture degree. Most people underestimate me. They see the glasses, the blueprints, the quiet demeanor, and assume I'm just another desk jockey. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. They're about to learn how wrong they are. It started on a Tuesday night in October. Rain was hammering our house in Portland, Maine, the kind of steady downpour that makes you want to stay inside with a good book and a beer. Claire was in the kitchen, her blonde hair pulled back in that messy bun she wore when she was stressed. She managed events for the city's biggest venues, always juggling 3 crises at once. "I'm going out tomorrow night," she said, not looking up from her laptop. "Nolan's band is having a reunion concert at the Neptune Theater." Nolan Pierce. The name made my jaw clench. Claire's childhood friend from high school, the guy who never quite made it as a musician but still drove around in a restored 1969 Camaro like he was some kind of rock star. He taught guitar lessons at the local music store and played weekend gigs at dive bars, living off the fumes of a dream that died 20 years ago. "Sounds fun," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Want me to come along?" Claire's fingers paused over the keyboard for just a second. "Oh, it's just going to be a bunch of old friends catching up. You'd be bored out of your mind." "Try me." She finally looked up, giving me that smile that used to make my knees weak. Now it just looked practiced. "Damon, honey, you hate that kind of music. Remember when I dragged you to see Nolan's band 5 years ago? You spent the whole night checking your phone." She wasn't wrong. But something in her tone, the way she avoided eye contact, set off every alarm bell I had. "Fair enough," I said. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." Claire laughed, the sound a little too bright. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just have fun." After she went upstairs to shower, I walked over to her laptop. The screen was still open to her email. I know it was wrong to look, but 15 years of marriage gives you certain instincts. Most of the messages were work-related, vendor contracts, venue schedules, the usual chaos. But one subject line caught my eye. "Tomorrow night can't come fast enough." I clicked it open. "Claire, I've been thinking about you all day. Tomorrow night is going to be perfect. Just us, just like old times. I've missed you so much." And my hands started shaking. I read it 3 more times, hoping I'd misunderstood something, but there it was, clear as day. My wife was having an affair with Nolan Pierce. I closed the laptop and walked to my workshop in the garage. It's where I go to think, surrounded by power tools and half-finished projects. The smell of sawdust and motor oil usually calms me down, but tonight, nothing could stop the rage building in my chest. 15 years. 15 goddamn years of marriage, and she was throwing it away for some washed-up musician who still thought he was 25. I pulled out my phone and bought a ticket to tomorrow night's concert. The Neptune Theater is one of those old venues that's seen better days. Built in the 1920s, it has character but needs work. Peeling paint, sticky floors, and a sound system that probably predates the Clinton administration. Perfect for a bunch of middle-aged rockers trying to recapture their youth. I got there early, wearing a baseball cap and a jacket I'd never worn around Claire. The place was already filling up with people I vaguely recognized from high school and various social functions over the years. I found a spot near the back, behind one of the massive speakers, where I could see everything but stay hidden. Claire arrived 20 minutes before showtime, looking gorgeous in a black dress I'd never seen before. She was alone, scanning the crowd with nervous energy. My heart did this stupid little flutter of hope. Maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe this was innocent. Then Nolan appeared. He looked exactly like what he was, a 40-year-old man desperately clinging to his 20-year-old self. Tight jeans, vintage band t-shirt, hair styled with enough product to survive a hurricane. He spotted Claire immediately and made a beeline through the crowd. When he reached her, he didn't just say hello. He pulled her into a hug that lasted way too long, his hands lingering on her waist. She didn't pull away. I took out my phone and started recording. The concert itself was painful to watch, and not just because of the infidelity unfolding in front of me. Nolan's band, Midnight Revival, a name that sounded like a rejected porn title, played covers of classic rock songs with the enthusiasm of men who'd convinced themselves they still had a shot at fame. The lead singer's voice cracked on the high notes, the drummer looked like he might have a heart attack, and Nolan's guitar solos went on about 30 seconds too long. But Claire watched it all, like she was seeing the Beatles at Shea Stadium. During the intermission, I followed them to the bar area. The lighting was dim, lots of shadows and corners where people could have private conversations. I positioned myself behind a pillar and kept recording. "You were amazing up there," Claire said, her hand on Nolan's arm. "Just like old times, right?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping to what I guess he thought was a seductive whisper. "Remember when we used to sneak out after your parents went to bed?" How could I forget? She was practically purring. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About us." "Nolan? I know you're married, but—" She kissed him. Right there in the middle of the bar, my wife of 15 years kissed another man like I didn't exist. I got it all on video, my hands surprisingly steady despite the fury coursing through my veins. When they broke apart, Claire looked around nervously. "We shouldn't do this here." "My place after the show? I can't stay long. I told Damon I was having a girls' night." Nolan grinned. What he doesn't know won't hurt him. Wrong, I thought. What he doesn't know is about to destroy both of you. I spent the second half of the concert planning. By the time the band played their final song, a butchered version of Don't Stop Believin' that would have made Journey weep, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my workshop with a yellow legal pad, writing down everything I knew and everything I needed to find out. Years of construction work had taught me that every project needs a solid foundation. This was just another kind of construction. First, I needed to protect my assets. Claire made good money as an event manager, but I'd been the primary breadwinner for most of our marriage. The house was in both our names, but I'd put down the down payment. Our savings accounts were joint, but most of the money came from my architectural firm. At 6 a.m., I called my lawyer. "Damon? Jim Morrison. Yes, that's really his name, and yes, he's heard all the jokes," sounded groggy. "It's barely dawn, man. What's the emergency?" "I need to see you today. It's about Claire." Jim's voice sharpened. He'd handled enough divorces to recognize the tone. "What happened?" "She's cheating. I have proof." "Jesus, okay, I can see you at 9. Bring whatever evidence you have and don't do anything stupid in the meantime." Too late for that, I thought. My next call was to Detective Wayne Kowalski. We'd worked together on a security consultation for a client's office building, and he'd left the force to start his own private investigation business. He was exactly the kind of guy you wanted in your corner, ex-military, thorough, and completely uninterested in moral ambiguity. "Wayne, it's Damon Harker. I need a favor." "What kind of favor?" "The kind that involves my wife and her boyfriend." There was a pause. "I'll be at your office in an hour." Claire was still asleep when I left for work. I wrote a note saying I had early meetings and would be home late. Let her think I was clueless for a little longer. Jim's office was downtown, in one of those converted brownstones that tried too hard to look historic. He was waiting for me with coffee and a grim expression. "Show me what you've got," he said. I played the videos from the night before. Jim watched without comment, occasionally taking notes. When the footage ended, he leaned back in his chair. This is good evidence of an affair, but Maine is a no-fault divorce state. The adultery won't affect the property division much. I'm not looking to take her to the cleaners, I said. I just want to make sure she can't take me to them either. Smart. We can file papers to protect your assets, especially anything you owned before the marriage. The house might be tricky since it's joint property, but we can work something out. How long do I have? If you're planning to file, I'd recommend doing it soon. The longer you wait, the more it looks like you condoned the affair. Wayne arrived at my office an hour later. My architectural firm occupied the third floor of a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. It was supposed to look creative and modern, but mostly it just looked like we couldn't afford better space. Tell me everything, Wayne said, settling into the chair across from my desk. I gave him the full story, including the videos. He watched with the detached professionalism of someone who'd seen this kind of thing 100 times before. What do you want me to find out? He asked. Everything. How long it's been going on, who else knows, whether there are other guys. I want to know what I'm really dealing with. And then what? I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. Then I'm going to make them both very sorry they ever met. Wayne studied my face for a long moment. I don't do anything illegal, Damon. Whatever you're planning, keep it on the right side of the law. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt anyone. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. But he took the case anyway. Wayne worked fast. Within 3 days, he had a comprehensive report on Nolan Pierce's life, and it wasn't pretty. The man was a walking disaster. 3 months behind on rent, maxed out credit cards, and a history of borrowing money from friends and never paying it back. He'd been fired from 2 teaching jobs for inappropriate conduct with adult students, which was code for sleeping with married women taking guitar lessons. Even better, Wayne had tracked down 2 of Nolan's ex-girlfriends who were more than happy to share stories about his cheating, lying, and general scumbag behavior. The guy's a predator, Wayne said, dropping the file on my desk. He specifically targets married women, tells them their husbands don't understand them, the whole routine. Your wife isn't his first, and she won't be his last. How long has this been going on? Based on what I could find, at least 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months. Claire had been lying to my face for half a year, coming home from her work meetings and girls' nights, and pretending everything was normal, making love to me while she was sleeping with him. The rage was so intense I had to grip the edge of my desk to keep from putting my fist through the wall. There's something else, Wayne said. I followed them yesterday. They went to that motel on Route 1, the one with the neon sign that's been flickering since the Carter administration. The Starlight? That's the one. They were there for 2 hours. I closed my eyes and tried not to picture it. Okay, I think it's time to make my move. That night, Claire announced she was working late again. Big event this weekend, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I might not be home until midnight. No problem, I said. I've got some work to catch up on myself. After she left, I got busy. First, I went to Claire's car and loosened the connection to her alternator. Not enough to cause an accident, just enough to make the car die at an inconvenient moment. Then I prepared my surprise. I'd bought a copy of Midnight Revival's self-produced CD from their website. The cover was a laughably bad Photoshop job of the band members trying to look mysterious and dangerous. They mostly looked constipated. I placed the CD on our kitchen table, along with a note written in my neatest handwriting. Claire, I hope you enjoyed the encore. Unfortunately, this is where the music stops. The divorce papers are with Jim Morrison. You can pick them up tomorrow. Don't bother coming home tonight. I've changed the locks. Damon P.S. You might want to call a tow truck. Then I sat back and waited. Claire's car died in the parking lot of the Starlight Motel at 11:47 p.m. I know because she called me, her voice tight with panic. Damon, my car won't start. Can you come get me? Where are you? A pause. I'm at the office. The car just died. That's weird. Which office? Downtown or the venue? Another pause, longer this time. Downtown. Okay, I'll be right there. I hung up and turned off my phone. Claire didn't make it home until 3 a.m. I heard her key in the lock, then the frustrated rattling when it wouldn't turn. She knocked softly at first, then louder. Damon? Damon, what's going on? Why won't my key work? I was sitting in the living room, in the dark, waiting. I turned on the lamp. Come in through the back, I called. We need to talk. When she walked into the kitchen and saw the CD and the note, her face went white. She picked up the note with shaking hands, read it twice, then looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. Damon, I can explain. Can you? Because I'd love to hear how you explain this. I pulled out my phone and played the video from the concert. Claire's face crumpled as she watched herself kissing Nolan. How long? I asked. It's not what you think. How long? She sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. 6 months. Were you ever going to tell me? I don't know, I was confused. I didn't mean for it to happen. But it kept happening. For 6 months. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Damon. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. No, I said, standing up. A mistake is forgetting to pay the electric bill. A mistake is putting salt in your coffee instead of sugar. What you did was make a choice. Every single time you lied to me, every time you went to see him, every time you came home and pretended everything was fine, those were all choices. Please, can we work this out? I'll end it with Nolan. I'll do whatever you want. I looked at my wife of 15 years, this woman I'd loved more than anything in the world, and felt nothing but disgust. You can start by getting the hell out of my house. News travels fast in a city the size of Portland, especially when you know how to help it along. By Friday morning, half the town knew that Claire Harker had been caught cheating on her husband with Nolan Pierce. I didn't have to do much. I just made a few strategic phone calls to the right people and let human nature take its course. First, I called Edie Morrison, our next-door neighbor. Edie was 73 years old and had been the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator for the past 20 years. She knew everyone's business and wasn't shy about sharing it. Damon, honey, how are you holding up? She asked, her voice dripping with sympathy. It's been rough, Edie. I just never thought Claire would do something like this. Well, I have to say, I'm not entirely surprised. I saw her sneaking around at all hours, and that car of his, that loud Camaro, I've seen it parked on Maple Street more than once. Maple Street was where the Starlight Motel was located. Really? Oh, yes. And you know what they say about musicians. All flash, no substance. By noon, Edie had called at least 6 people. I know because 3 of them called me to offer their support and share what they'd heard. Next, I visited Mick Sullivan, who owned O'Malley's Pub downtown. Mick was an old friend from my construction days, the kind of guy who knew everyone and remembered everything. His bar was gossip central for the working-class crowd. Jesus, Damon, he said, pouring me a beer even though it was barely past lunch. I heard about Claire. What a bitch. I just want to move on, I said, playing the wounded husband role perfectly. But it's hard when everyone's talking about it. You know what pisses me off? That asshole Nolan's been coming in here for months, bragging about his conquest. Never mentioned her name, but he kept talking about this married woman he was showing a good time. Perfect. I couldn't have scripted it better. He was bragging about it? Oh yeah, real proud of himself. Said she was classy, had money, and her husband was some kind of pencil pusher who didn't appreciate what he had. The rage flared again, but I kept it under control. What did people think about that? Most of the guys thought he was full of shit. Nolan's always been a talker, you know. But now that we know it was true... Mick shook his head. Let's just say he's not going to be welcome here anymore. I appreciate that, Mick. Hey, we look out for our own. That piece of shit wants to play games with other men's wives. He can drink somewhere else. By evening, the story had spread through Claire's professional network too. Beth Kowalski, Wayne's wife, who worked as an administrative assistant at the city planning office, had made sure everyone in Claire's industry knew about the affair. Claire called me around 8 p.m., her voice hoarse from crying. "Damon, please, we need to talk. People are saying terrible things about me." "What kind of things?" "My boss called me into his office today. Someone told him I was having an affair and that it might affect my professional reputation. I could lose my job." "That would be unfortunate. Please don't do this. I know I hurt you, but destroying my career isn't going to fix anything." "I'm not destroying anything, Claire. I'm just not covering for you anymore." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not going to lie to people when they ask me what happened to our marriage. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences." She hung up on me. 20 minutes later, Nolan called. "You son of a bitch," he snarled. "What did you do?" "I'm sorry. Who is this?" "You know damn well who this is. You've been spreading lies about me all over town." "I haven't spread any lies, Nolan. I've just been telling the truth. My landlord got 3 calls today from people saying I was a scumbag who sleeps with married women. My boss at the music store says parents are complaining about me teaching their daughters." "Wow, that sounds rough." "This isn't over, Harker." "Actually, it is. Stay away from my wife, stay away from me, and maybe you can salvage what's left of your pathetic excuse for a life." He hung up, but I could hear him screaming obscenities right up until the line went silent. I poured myself a scotch and sat in my workshop, surrounded by the familiar smells of wood and metal. Phase 1 was complete. Claire's reputation was in ruins, Nolan was facing social and professional consequences, and everyone in town knew exactly what kind of people they were. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Saturday morning, I was in my workshop when I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Nolan's Camaro, its engine still ticking as it cooled. The man himself was striding toward my front door with the kind of swagger that suggested he thought he was about to intimidate me. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession, followed by heavy pounding. "Open up, Harker! We need to talk!" I took my time walking to the door. When I opened it, Nolan was standing on my porch, with his chest puffed out and his hands clenched into fists. He was trying to look tough, but I could see the fear in his eyes. "Can I help you with something, Nolan? You can stop this bullshit campaign you're running against me." "I'm not running any campaign. I'm just telling people the truth." "The truth?" He stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage. Nolan was about 6'2", but I'd been dealing with aggressive contractors and subcontractors for 15 years. Size didn't intimidate me anymore. "The truth is that you've been sleeping with my wife for 6 months while pretending to be my friend." "Your wife came to me, asshole. She said you didn't pay attention to her anymore, that you were boring and cold." The words hit like a physical blow, but I didn't let it show. "And you were just being a good Samaritan, right? Helping out a lonely housewife? I gave her what she needed, what you couldn't. That did it. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of loving Claire, and this piece of garbage was standing on my porch telling me I wasn't good enough for my own wife." I smiled, and Nolan took an involuntary step backward. "You know what I think, Nolan? I think you're scared. Your little fantasy is falling apart, and you're realizing that actions have consequences. I'm not scared of you. You should be." We stared at each other for a long moment. Nolan was trying to look tough, but sweat was beading on his forehead despite the cool October air. "Just leave us alone," he said finally. "Us?" I laughed. "There is no us, you delusional piece of shit. Claire is my wife. She made vows to me, not to you, and when this is all over, you'll be exactly what you were before, a washed-up loser who peaked in high school. Get lost, Harker. No, you get lost. Move off my land before I call the police. Nolan turned and stomped back to his car, but he stopped at the driver's door. This isn't over, he called. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. He peeled out of my driveway, leaving rubber marks on the asphalt. I watched him go, then went back inside to make a phone call. Wayne, it's Damon. Nolan just left my house. He was making threats. What kind of threats? Nothing specific, but he was aggressive. I want it documented. I'll file a report. Anything else? Yeah, it's time for Phase 2. That afternoon, I drove to the East Side Community Center, where Nolan taught guitar lessons on weekends. The parking lot was full of minivans and SUVs, parents dropping off their kids for music lessons. I waited until I saw Nolan's Camaro pull in. Then I got out of my truck and walked over to him. What the hell are you doing here? He demanded. We need to finish our conversation. I've got nothing to say to you. That's fine. You can just listen. I grabbed him by the shirt and pushed him against his car. He was bigger than me, but I'd spent years doing physical labor while he'd spent years sitting on bar stools. The muscle memory was still there. Here's how this is going to work, I said, my voice low and calm. You're going to stop seeing my wife. You're going to stop calling her, texting her, or having any contact with her whatsoever. If I find out you've so much as looked at her, I will make your life a living hell. You can't. I slammed him against the car again, harder this time. His head bounced off the roof with a satisfying thunk. I can do whatever I want, Nolan. You see, I'm the wronged party here. I'm the victim. Which means I have the moral high ground and the sympathy of everyone who matters in this town. People will believe whatever I tell them to believe, because I'm not the one who got caught cheating. I let go of his shirt and stepped back. Nolan's face was red and his hands were shaking with rage and fear. Stay away from Claire, I said. Stay away from me, and maybe you can keep what's left of your sad little life. As I walked back to my truck, I heard him call after me. She doesn't love you anymore, Harker. She told me so. I stopped and turned around. You know what, Nolan? You're probably right. But here's the thing. She doesn't love you either. You're just a midlife crisis with a guitar. And when this is over, she'll realize that. The look on his face told me I'd hit the target. 2 weeks later, Claire had moved out of our house and into a furnished apartment downtown. The divorce papers were filed, and Jim was handling the property division. Claire's boss had restructured her position, which was corporate speak for a demotion and pay cut. Nolan had been fired from the music store after 3 more parents complained about his inappropriate behavior. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. The plan came to me on a Thursday evening while I was having dinner at O'Malley's. The bar was crowded, full of the usual mix of construction workers, city employees, and local business owners. Everyone was talking, laughing, sharing stories about their day. That's when I realized what I really wanted. An audience. I called Claire from the bar's payphone. Yes, O'Malley's still had a payphone, because Mick was old school like that. We need to talk, I said when she answered. Damon, where are you calling from? Meet me at O'Malley's tomorrow night at 8. Come alone. I don't think that's a good idea. It wasn't a request, Claire. If you want this divorce to go smoothly, you'll be there. I hung up before she could argue. Next, I called Nolan. What do you want? He answered on the first ring. I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? Meet me at O'Malley's tomorrow night at 8. I'll explain everything then. Why should I trust you? Because you don't have a choice. Your life is falling apart, Nolan. I'm offering you a way to salvage what's left of it. There was a long pause. Fine. 8 o'clock. Friday night, O'Malley's was packed. Word had gotten around that something was going to happen, and half the town had shown up to watch. Mick had even moved the big screen TV to make room for more tables. Claire arrived first, looking nervous and out of place in her designer dress. She found a table in the corner and ordered a white wine, glancing around at the crowd with obvious discomfort. Nolan showed up 10 minutes later, scanning the room like he was walking into an ambush. which, in a way, he was. I waited until they were both settled, then stood up from my table near the bar. "Ladies and gentlemen," I called out, my voice carrying over the crowd. "Can I have your attention for a minute?" The bar gradually quieted down. All eyes turned to me. Most of you know me. I'm Damon Harker. I've lived in this town for 20 years, worked construction, started my own business, tried to be a good neighbor and a good husband. I gestured toward Claire and Nolan. These two people destroyed my marriage. For 6 months, they carried on an affair behind my back, lying to me, humiliating me, and making a fool out of me. Claire's face had gone white. Nolan was looking around desperately, probably searching for an exit. Now, I could have handled this quietly. I could have filed for divorce and moved on with my life. But I realized something. This town deserves to know exactly what kind of people they are. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the bar's sound system. Mick had helped me set it up earlier. This is a recording of my wife and her boyfriend taken 2 weeks ago at the Starlight Motel. I hit play. Claire's voice filled the bar. "I can't keep lying to him, Nolan. I feel terrible." Nolan's voice. "Don't worry about Damon. He's clueless. Besides, what's he gonna do? He's just some boring architect." Claire. "Still, maybe we should cool things down for a while." Nolan. "Are you kidding? This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. A beautiful, successful woman who actually appreciates me. Your husband doesn't deserve you, Claire. He never did." The bar was silent. Every person in the room was staring at Claire and Nolan with a mixture of disgust and fascination. I turned off the recording. "That's who they really are," I said. "A cheating wife and a predator who targets married women. They don't deserve your respect, your business, or your friendship." Claire stood up, tears streaming down her face. "Damon, please." "Sit down," I said coldly. "I'm not finished." She sat. Nolan Pierce has been bragging in this very bar about his conquest for months. He's been telling anyone who would listen about the married woman he was screwing, how her husband was too stupid to figure it out. The crowd turned to look at Nolan, who was shrinking into his chair. And Claire Harker, my wife of 15 years, has been lying to my face every single day while she carried on this affair. Coming home from her work meetings and her girls' nights and pretending to love me. I walked over to their table. "So here's my final offer. You two deserve each other. Take your broken lives, your ruined reputations, and your pathetic excuse for a relationship and get the hell out of my town." Claire was sobbing openly now. Nolan looked like he was going to be sick. "And if I ever see either of you again," I continued, "if you ever try to contact me or interfere in my life, I will make what happened tonight look like a friendly conversation." I turned back to the crowd. "The first round is on me," I announced. "Let's drink to honesty, loyalty, and knowing who your real friends are." The bar erupted in cheers. People rushed to congratulate me, to buy me drinks, to tell me how sorry they were about what I'd been through. Claire and Nolan slipped out during the celebration. I watched them go through the window. Two broken people walking to their separate cars, their affair finally exposed to the harsh light of public judgment. 3 months later, Claire moved to Boston. Nolan left town a week after the confrontation at O'Malley's, and nobody knew where he went. Nobody cared. I kept the house, most of our assets, and my reputation. More importantly, I kept my self-respect. People in town still talk about that night at O'Malley's. They call it the night Damon Harker got his revenge. But it wasn't really about revenge. It was about justice. It was about making sure that actions have consequences, that lies eventually get exposed, and that sometimes the good guy really does win. I'm 41 now, single and building a new life. I've got my work, my friends, and the satisfaction of knowing that I stood up for myself when it mattered most. Claire sends me Christmas cards from Boston. I throw them away without opening them. Nolan Pierce, as far as I know, never played music in public again.